I'm Jess Jenzen with Teads, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. I love that we came after the Women in Leadership panel, and I was talking to Sierra a little bit over lunch about how I also moved to Columbus during COVID with a newborn. It was a fun time. Silver lining story for us this far, and I'm really thankful to be part of the Columbus advertising and marketing community. So thank you again to Brand Innovators for having us, and to Bob Evans Farms for hosting us today. I'm excited to chat more with Wendy and Jacob about how you and your teams work specifically to integrate 3 core pieces of insights into your refreshed campaign manifesto, and then how you beautifully brought that to life via the creative. Before we begin, seems like a little quiet even though we're after lunch. I hope we could get a little more energy infused in here. I just want to warn everyone that I really like puns and I can't help myself. I'm not going to call them out because that would be cheesy, but keep an ear out. I'd love to have this wonderful panel take a moment to introduce themselves. I'm not trying to butter you up, but you both have incredibly rich backgrounds in the CPG world, and would love to have you share a little bit more about that before we get cooking.
Thank you. All right, I'm Wendy DelVecchio. I lead our Insights and Analytics team at Bob Evans. I've been here about 4 years, so you and I started about the same time. We've been on the same journey that Time talked about this morning, about really kind of accelerating and innovating how we go to market with our grocery products and being grocery centric. Background. So prior to coming here, I've always been in insights. I started my career in Pittsburgh working for Heinz. I was chatting with Roger years and years ago across really I did insights really across all the businesses there except for ketchup. And then I moved to Kellogg, where I worked across all businesses again, except for cereal. So I like to say I work on the large, growing, money-making businesses, not those legacy things. And then coming here to Bob Evans to really create, establish our function, and grow our function as business partners, really across the organization.
So you threw down a challenge with the pun piece. I've been sitting here for 45 seconds, struggling to come up with something. So I think I'm still, I've got the post-lunch lag here. But yeah, my name is Jacob Norris. I've been with the company since January, so not quite half a year. So fresh face here. And I work on our dinner size business on the brand team. So really interesting. If you look at my background, I started out in beer. Then I went to non-alcoholic beer, then I went to beans, then to bacon and Bob Evans. And the interesting thing from my background is the last 2 companies I worked for were obsessed with Bob Evans. In the interview process, when I got here, when I told people that, what do you mean, obsessed with us? Really? Yeah, absolutely. So pretty interesting that two companies I worked for that saw Bob Evans as a competitor, and then I knew that. So happy to be here and happy to be on the panel.
Sure, I can get started. Okay, so I'm going to just very briefly take you through 3 little pieces of research that we did to create essentially our manifesto. And the journey started at the very beginning. So given the whole cultural relevance that we're talking about really at this whole forum, it was really the start of our manifesto, of our creative articulation. First and foremost, we started really understanding ourselves. So who are we as a brand? I call this brand story, if you will, and this was a few years ago we did this work where qualitative, you kind of gave people stacks of images and gave them a context in which to sort them. And what I think is kind of interesting is not just the images that came up within dinner and breakfast when it comes to Bob Evans and each of these occasions. Yes, it's the consistency of it, but what's behind it is the story of why these images. And it led a lot to what Time was talking about this morning, the farm. Yes, the farm is important to us. It's not the literalness of the farm, it's the feeling that one gets on the farm. So it's farm, it's family, it's connected, it's grounded, it's simplicity. It's I like to talk about Secret Life of Pets too, if anybody ever saw that movie, where this little dog is all stressed out, freaking out, new baby in the family, all that sort of thing. They take him to the farm, and he meets the old dog on the farm, and he goes through a number of different just basic dog activities, and he's relaxed, he's grounded, he's comforted, he knows who he is again. He feels connected again. And then it pulls all the way through to our foods. They are hearty, heartwarming foods. And underlying all of that from an emotional standpoint is the idea around comfort, and then the idea around honor. So not necessarily being super didactic in what is right and correct, but a lot of our consumers know our brand for being true to that, if you will. And then target audience understanding. So I don't think anybody's really kind of talked about this much earlier today, but we just finished actually some work and really kind of diving deep into who our audience is. So probably in 2017, I feel like the team had done a person segmentation. Coming from Kellogg, that's kind of what we might have taken from different organizations. Coming from Kellogg, I kind of drank the Kool-Aid around behaviors and occasions, less so about the people. And I think what was really telling for us is we had this person segmentation. It was fine. Gave us somebody to go after, gave us a lot of attitudes, personality attributes, that sort of thing. But when we talked to them, I felt like I was getting two conflicting messages. You got half the group kind of saying, I feel guilty when I use these convenience products. I feel like I'm not doing the right thing for my family. And then the other half saying, my God, these things are great. They're a lifesaver. I wouldn't be able to live this full, wonderful life that I have without them. And so we engaged in some other behavioral science kind of based research around what people are doing and why, and that allowed us to really open up, I would say, that aperture of who's really receptive to the brand offering without us having to almost apologize for ourselves and try and make them feel better about the guilt. Now we can really celebrate what's so great about convenient foods along with what's so great about our foods. So there's a little bit up there about what we learned related to our target audience that connects really well with the brand. And then lastly, working with our agencies, they bring in a lot of cultural context too. And what I think is really beautiful, again, is what's kind of been changing these last few years, is the idea around, I don't know, permacrisis is a word that everybody necessarily has used or is familiar with, but the idea around there's the shoulds in life are a whole lot less. Like I like to think of, Leave It to Beaver or 1960s, you had to own your house and you had mom, dad, mom at home, 2.5 kids, and that's the should. You sat down and you ate breakfast together. You sat down. Your kids go to, your kids go to college. What's the last one? You get married at a certain age. You have kids at a certain age. None of that really is really what people are necessarily thinking shoulds are anymore. And like I said, from our honor underlying piece of our brand, there is a should, but it's the should on my terms, on my idea, as opposed to kind of more of a societal imposition. So when we bring these sorts of trends together, where our consumer is, what our brand means, as well as what's going on out there in the world, our agency created this manifesto, if you will, as to how we articulate our brand via creative executions in a way that brings us all together, I guess. So I guess I can read this, it's a little hard at this angle. At Bob Evans Farms, we believe we could all use a little more comfort. After a day of fruit pile mishaps, jam-packed schedules, we all crave something that feels good. Bob Evans serves up feel good by the forkful. Pillowy mashed potatoes, perfectly seasoned sausage, and velvety mac and cheese.
Yeah,
You can trust you're getting farm fresh ingredients in every bite. That's why you'll find us in the refrigerated section. We spent decades bringing you no-fuss food you can feel confident about sharing at the dinner table or the coffee table. No judgment here. And the best part is, these foods of affirmation take longer to enjoy than they do to make. And that's what people want at the end of their busy days. So the next time you hunger for a heaping helping of quality food served with a generous side of peace of mind, there's one solution: bring out the Bob. And so we had put this manifesto along with a couple of others in front of people, just to kind of, what are you getting out of this? And they were telling us exactly what we wanted to hear. So that if we could activate against this manifesto, they knew that we were going to be delivering great, fresh tasting food, that we were bringing people together as a brand, that we're offering comfort, and that we are super easy, convenient, to kind of fit into your life. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jacob to share more about our executions.
Right, and I sort of realized that I did
Bob,
not come up here with
are
a
you
third
ready
hand.
to bring out the comfort? The fun?
I don't think that's probably a good sign though, because I'll tell you, having worked on the agency side years ago, and on the client side, I'm typically very suspicious of a long wind-up before you see the creative. So if somebody sits there and they tells you about the creative for 30 minutes before they show you the creative, they're convincing themselves as much as you. So I'll just shut up and let's go ahead and roll this one. No, not you. No.
Hello, Bob Evans. Are you ready to bring out the comfort? The freshness? The realness? Are you ready to bring out the Bob? It's time to bring out the Bob.
It's one of those voices, you beg Santa Claus to bring you something like that, you just don't quite get it. But, so the idea here is that it's not going to surprise anybody, right? If you're familiar with the Bob Evans brand, whether like time is something that's always been a part of your life, or if it's something that you've only come in contact with in the last year or two after you moved to the Midwest, Bob Evans is comfort personified. Right? So when you look at where we are in our history, and that this is something we'll touch on a little bit later, but a lot of brands with strong history, it can be something that's very, very positive for you because people have associations, very positive associations with their family, with their friends, with comforting times, right? It can also be very difficult to get away from. It can also be baggage, right? So sometimes your strongest selling point is also something that you can't hide from it, but you also can't make that the center point of what you do, right? So we are comfort personified, and if you look at some of the older work that we've done, we were in a very functional place because we were essentially introducing the brand right after the post-acquisition. Big push, big capital infusion, big push there for growth. So there was an opportunity to introduce Bob Evans to a lot of people outside of the Midwest. And it starts with food, right? But it moves further to that, to a feeling. So I got to join the company at a very interesting time because Wendy, Sierra, and the rest of the team, people had done tons and tons of work. And they had gotten us to a place where I get to join and then do the fun stuff immediately. So all the hard work had been done. So I basically joined the marathon at mile 25 and got to finish the race with everyone else. But I think it puts us in a spot to where looking at where we are as a brand, and obviously we had history, post-acquisition, and then you had COVID. So we get a really good chance to come out and introduce ourselves and reintroduce ourselves to people. And I think the team landed in a really good space for the brand, which is not a radical deviation from the past. We belong to that past, we're plugging it, we're friends with it, but there's an opportunity to become contemporary, right? It's not a radical revolution, but it's a way of contemporizing the brand for new audiences. I think I'm pointing the clicker on the spot, there we go. 2 clicks. Forgive me. So essentially, this is an excellent time for us because you had a few years where, let's just face it, if you worked in marketing the past few years, interesting time, right? All the way from people going on hiring sprees, some people doing the opposite in the marketing industry. For the first time in my entire career, I got to be the guy sitting across the table from supply going, I can sell it if you can make it, because it was the opposite for 15 years, then suddenly you get to look at your supply partner saying, you're the one holding us up now, not the demand side, it's the supply side. And we flip back. But we landed to a great place today, where it's about driving demand for the brand and really layering in that storytelling, moving a good evolution past the functional, the food-centric spots that we did here and focusing on storytelling. Let me just keep flipping. I'm sorry. I'm going to get an F- in slide flipping today. So we're really focused on where do we go next, right? So I stepped in right at the fun time. Everybody had done all the hard work, the groundwork, all the necessary pieces to build the foundation to get the spot out the door. Now we're focused on three things. One, drive distinction. And let's face it, a lot of categories, particularly developed categories, have problems with distinction. Things become category generic. You see people focusing on value. You see lots and lots of trends that make it necessary to stand up and remind people why they buy not just a brand versus a store brand, but your brand, right? So we're focused on driving distinction, with that creating relevance for our consumers beyond table stakes, because if you look at a lot of categories, convenience is table stakes. It's not a purchase driver. Everybody in that part of the store is convenient. I don't think there's a package out there that takes 2 seconds longer to open than ours, right? So you have to move past that to the storytelling and then really find those motivating moments for your consumers and connect with them in a compelling way. And with that, I'll hand it slide to Clifford.
Thank you both. I think that you're such a great mashup between both of you from an insights and data perspective, and then pulling that through into how the creative and the storytelling comes to life. Jacob, I'd like to take a minute to chat about how the sausage is made, so to speak. So particularly given the last slide you shared, how do you see Bring Out Bob coming to life beyond the content spot? If you could give us a glimpse into how this could unfold into different creative iterations and or marketing tactics in the future.
I want to make a roll joke or a ground joke. So just pretend like I made a really good sausage joke there and everybody laughed. I think the team was already ready to hit the ground running with what we had. So some of those pieces have already been seeded in the market from the Bring Out the Bob campaign. If you look at the website, if you look at PR, a lot of those elements have already been deployed in market to great fanfare. And I think now we're at the spot where the sky's the limit, right? So we've got a great idea. We're working through what the next, let's say the full campaign looks like with our agency partners. And we're in a spot now where we feel everybody's very enthused and they're very inspired by what we're doing. So we're excited to see that come to life for the next fiscal year, so coming in October.
Okay, Wendy, the next question is for you. In reference to Bob Evans' first CPG standalone campaign, which just in case anyone missed it, it was this morning when Time shared, when Time shared the new spot, Love at First Bite. What did you continue to learn through testing about the balance between content, showcasing the food as the hero, and then storytelling beyond the food itself?
Yeah, I like this question. I think somebody this morning referenced the emotional and functional sort of balance that you have to take, essentially. So we saw Alfonso and Jerry, and yet it was a food-centric story, right, that they were talking about the food, they were excited about the food, didn't see a whole lot of the food. Then I would say historically what happened was the pandemic couldn't get the talent to actually, create some more content. So we created what we call like a food-centric story, literally no people. It's just big, beautiful food, which also did quite well for us then out in the market. And we know big, beautiful food is lovely, like in food that sells, of course. But then how do we, it doesn't do much to evolve you as a brand that makes an emotional connection for people. We're already known for being beautiful food, delicious. So how do we make a connection as a brand? And so with this manifesto, we tried different combinations of food only to storytelling only. And we learned you really can't jump from food to storytelling because you kind of lose people in that. Obviously, somebody referenced how brands grow this morning. We all think about our brands way more than anybody else does. And so we have to make that connection for people. And I think where we've landed in some of these more recent content pieces are it's still food-centric, if you will, still food-forward, but we're trying to overlay a little bit more of that emotive space to build the personality of the brand into something that people can relate to.
And since we're talking about food as the hero, as my daughter would say, I know this isn't an easy peasy macaroni cheesy question, and no one likes to pick a favorite child, but if you were forced to choose, what is your favorite Bob Evans Farms product and why? Both of you. Both of you.
This is an easy one, so I can go first. The mashed potatoes. I tried the mashed potatoes. I've had them well before I worked here. I am not a prepared foods person, as many people might know about me here. I love to just cook and create on my own, but our mashed potatoes are so good, just from a product standpoint. And through testing, we are the gold standard.
I would have to say, speaking of kids, my favorite is our classic mac and cheese, because that is one of the 6 or 7 things, I'm sort of losing count, that my oldest son will eat. So mac and cheese for the rescue, because I can eat anything. I am very, very comfortable with every single thing that we make. However, the one thing that puts a smile on his face will put a smile on my face. So.
I know we mentioned I always have the mashed potatoes in our fridge. It's always in my parents' fridge. I think you're from Ohio. You know what belongs in the fridge. Okay, there's no puns on this one, believe it or not. Wendy, in our initial meeting, you shared that you were doing some really interesting work based on findings from X Stereotype, which for the audience is a research strategy vendor who leverages AI technology and will evaluate your content to find if there's any biases and also share back how inclusive your content is. Can you share a little bit more about that work? I know you're really proud of that, and how it's relevant for an ever-evolving, diverse consumer base.
Thank you. I think we mentioned it briefly this morning too. Somebody was talking about how do you engage the diversity that is in the consumers. And DE&I is uber important to us here at Bob Evans. And so we had done a piece of research a couple of years ago as a baseline, where we essentially submitted every piece of content that was out there in the world in the past few years or whatever. And what we learned was that a lot of our content was not biased, if you will, did not have a whole lot of bias inherent in it. But again, if you're just showing food, it really doesn't have a propensity. But we had the opportunity for inclusivity. So Ty mentioned a lot this morning our farm salutes, and in a lot of that content, we got great kudos for inclusivity there, because it's a wonderful way of showing the diversity of people from an age, gender, race, ethnicity standpoint that are in the military and engage with the military. And so our support of these families, of very different families across the board, went a long way to show our inclusivity as a brand. And so, the manifesto you have up there, as well as some of our recent content, we've done the same thing to put it through this sort of evaluation process to learn, double check, we're not being biased in any form of our communication, as well as we're being much more inclusive along the way.
She was saying she thinks there's something else that was on her mind, but I said I give her the mic back, whatever she wants. Even though I do like talking to it. Okay, I love that, and I think it's a good example of rooting your work in the insights and then holding yourself accountable via a third party, but then also leveraging those insights to sow the seeds of the future. Speaking of the future, we also have to take a look back to see where we've been. Bob Evans is over 75 years old. I believe it's 76 years old company. Anyone? Yes? Okay. So both of you, Jacob and Wendy, as a leading producer and distributor of refrigerated dinner sides and breakfast items, what challenges have you faced in staying relevant, and how does the company overcome those challenges while preserving the core brand ethos? I don't know who wants to take that first.
I'll do a 2-second one. My 2-second one was really my whole upfront, right? It was going back to what were the roots of this brand, and after we did that brand story, it was amazing. We went back to the archives, and Bob had written a lot of the same things about the brand, about how you go to market, about how you connect with the consumer. And I hadn't seen that before we did the research, and it was really cool to see elements of that way back in our history that then we could take forward. And so a lot of what you saw in how we're bringing comfort to life is, like Jacob said, contemporization, modernization. A lot of stuff you see around comfort can feel very old sweatery, Our agency likes to use the word tropes, like grandma, give me a hug in our old fluffy sweater kind of thing. And that is not the type of comfort we are going after. It's more of that, like I said, that grounded, that chance to reconnect after the crazy busy day that you have. So I think it's just constantly kind of being in touch with your consumer and culture and finding those roots that you can continue to pull through.
And I'll just build on that a little bit. So I think a lot of it is about values, because if you look at trends change a lot. Trends will change every, seems like 2 or 3 months. Something new will come along. What does not change very frequently or very easily is values. So if you look at deeply held values and you look back over decades, it will take decades for people to change their inner values. So if you look at comfort as something like a sweater, something that's very temporary or very trendy, just go on TikTok. I'm sure there's probably something new and fresh that I've never seen about comfort popping up the last couple of months. Those things will come and go, but the actual value for people who hold it dear will not change, and it will not change easily. So really what we have to do is we have to make sure that in a contemporary way, we're lining up what we do with what consumers hold dear, right? So we could obviously talk about ourselves. Everybody in marketing can talk about themselves a lot. We could talk about the food, but it's really going back to that storytelling and tapping into the value of comfort versus something that's more of a trend and something likely to change.
We have 2 more minutes. I do have one more question, but if anyone would like to ask a question, I feel like we can default to the audience. Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. 2 minutes. Both of you have very rich, hearty backgrounds in the world of CPG, with Wendy spending time at both Kellogg's and Heinz, and Jacob at Anheuser-Busch and Bush's Beans, among others. Bush. Can you share one learning experience from your background that has helped guide you in culturally based decisions here in these walls?
30 seconds or less. I think what I learned through my previous experiences is really just to be open to and research new methodologies, new ways of understanding things. I mean, I think biases are everywhere, and as we design research, it's been so refreshing here at Bob Evans that, I mean, everybody's open to new ways of understanding, new ways of growing, and I've been here 4 years now, and it hasn't subsided. So it's super exciting to see the consumer being front and center and being open to new ways of understanding who they are.
And I would say the people that you work with are your most valuable resource. People will say that over and over and over again, but it's really true. It's the things that people do, the specifics, the things that they might say you might not remember, but they will remember years later how you made them feel. So really interesting story. Met one of our agency partners recently who worked with, she was on the agency side, worked with somebody that I used to work with. Could you imagine being such a bad leader that 10 years later, complete strangers who realize they both know you were bonding over how bad that this person treated their agency partners, and you're just looking, yeah, that is something you want to avoid. Never be that person, because people will absolutely remember how you made them feel.
Thank you.